And secondly, I speak today as the president of Repairs of the Breach and the senior lecturer of Repairs of the Breach and the co-chair with Dr. Liz Theo Harris of the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival. And I want to make this statement and then have Liz to make one, and then we want to have Adonis speak to us on behalf of all the dreamers. For Trump to say he loves Hispanic and Latino students and DACA recipients, but he has to nullify DACA, sounds like Jim Crow era white supremacy. Who also used to say they loved people, but they had to follow the segregationist law of their time. Trump and Sessions are hypocrites. To claim the rule of law when he just pardoned a criminal, Joe Arpaio. That's right. To claim a love for the rule of law when he signed a unconstitutional Muslim ban. That's right. They do not love the law when the first thing Jeff Sessions did as Attorney General was to pull out of a case against voter suppression, refuse to defend voting rights in a case from North Carolina, and then the Supreme Court ruled unanimously that the law was unconstitutional and racist, and Jeff Sessions, one of his first acts was to take the U.S. Department of Justice out of the case on the side of voting rights. They do not believe in the rule of law. They believe in playing to their base through racism and otherization of people. It's important to say that here in Detroit. I called a friend of mine, Liz, who's a PhD in history today, because I wanted a historical reference to expose this hypocrisy of someone claiming a love for the law, but then doing the exact opposite. Did you know that when Mamie Teal Bradley, mother of 14-year-old Emmett Till, who was tortured to death by white supremacists in Mississippi, in the Mississippi Delta in 1955, when she arrived at the trial of two of her son's killers, she was immediately accosted by Sheriff H. Clarence Strider, and he said to her, "You are now in the state of Mississippi. You will come under all the laws of the state of Mississippi." He claimed that he was engaging in the rule of law by accosting Ms. Bradley. As he said those words about the law, Sheriff Strider was holding two black witnesses to the lynching of Emmett Till in his jail without charges and under false names to prevent them from testifying against the murders. So on the one hand, he was saying he upheld the law while he was breaking the law. He had refused to conduct any investigation of the lynching, though he was legally bound to do so. He had released the two white men on trial for murder several times without asking a bond so that they could go home and visit their families. He had lied on the witness stand himself. The point I'm making is that segregationists routinely decried nonviolent direct action protests as being illegal, pointing out that they trespassed on private property and that segregation was the law. That's an old trick. to claim that you're doing something because it's the law, when in fact it's not the law, but more importantly, what you are doing violates the higher law of God and are blatantly unconstitutional and a violation of the greatest promises of our Constitution, which is the establishment of justice and equal protection under the law. Segregation laws were legal too, but they were immoral. Even if what they did today was legal, and I don't believe it is, and what President Obama did was not illegal, it has not been proven illegal, but even if what Trump and Sessions did today was legal, it's immoral and violates a higher human law. And for Mr. Trump, Liz, and Adonis to say he loves the DACA students, but he had to do this. If this is love, I would hate to see how they treat people they don't love. President Obama's actions on DACA have not been proven unconstitutional, and we stand here today, many of us have criticized not just Trump, but Obama, Clinton, Bush, Reagan, because America has too long treated our immigrant brothers and sisters wrong. It is a shame and a disgrace for a nation full of immigrants to keep treating immigrants wrong. It is a shame and a disgrace for politicians to support laws that if those laws were in place when their great-grandmothers tried to come here, they couldn't have got in the country. This action is immoral, it's inhumane. These young people have served the country. They've died serving America. They've contributed to this country. Many of them are in the armed services. What are they going to do now? In many ways, Adonis and others like him have acted more American than the president. And to hear politicians who have done so many immoral things. They've tried to destroy health care, immoral. They refused to raise minimum wages, immoral. They've not brought federal prosecution against people who poison water and poison children, immoral. And to hear those politicians say things like I just heard when I was leaving the hotel, we want to help youth, as one congressman said, but we want to help those who haven't violated any moral standards. This coming from someone who time and time again has voted on and for immoral laws. It is sickening, it is sad, and we must challenge it. We also must challenge that claiming that an end to DACA was done to benefit the economy and to protect workers is cynical and sinister. To try and pit these young people against workers is sinister. It undermines our moral claims, and the claim that these young people negatively impact our economy is a three-letter word: a lie. Trump and Sessions have been wrong on voting rights. They've been wrong on white supremacy, and they are wrong on DACA. Now let me say this to the members of the media, and I hope you print it. This attack on mostly Latino young people is racist. It is the policy agenda of white supremacy and white nationalism. Just because you say you love somebody doesn't mean you're not a white supremacist. Because if you say you love them but pass laws to hurt them, and those laws are driven by racism, that's white supremacy. You can't just say you're against white supremacy when somebody drives a car through a crowd and kills someone. That is white supremacy when the motivation was hate. But Richard Spencer, who's a leading white supremacist, said that what drew him to Donald Trump was his positions on immigrants. White supremacy is not just about interpersonal relationship and being against hate. Just because you're against hate doesn't mean you're against white supremacy. White supremacy and white nationalism has an agenda. White supremacy and white nationalism is against voting rights. White supremacy and white nationalism is homophobic. White supremacy and white nationalism is against Muslims and xenophobic. White nationalism and white supremacy support policies that undermine fair and just immigration policies. To do what they did today is to support the policy agenda of white nationalism. White nationalism, not white people, but white nationalists. Those who apply that, because you actually have some black folk supporting white nationalism. Because if you black and you support candidates and elected officials that support policies of white nationalism and you don't say anything, you are an accessory to the crime of white nationalism. White nationalism wants to see mass deportation of undocumented immigrants. In fact, they want, as you hear in white nationalism, they talk about race wars. They believe one of the first volleys in a race war is the attack on our Latino and Mexican brothers and sisters. And so President Donald Trump is not evolving on DACA. He is devolving and leading the nation in a downward spiral. Taking DACA from thousands of young dreamers is immoral and a violation of our deepest constitutional values, which demand a commitment to justice, and it is a violation of the values of the Bible he put his hand on when he swore himself into office. Because the Bible says, when I was a stranger, you took me in. The Bible says that you're supposed to treat the stranger or the immigrant just like you treat a brother or a sister. And that is why if those who claim to profess so-called white evangelicalism do not stand up and call the president out on this and call Sessions out on this, I say what Rabbi Heschel said to John Kennedy in 1963. He said, if this country doesn't do right by Negroes, you forfeit the right to worship God. If this country does not do right by our immigrant brothers and sisters, you forfeit the right to worship God. The prophet said, take away your prayers, take away your sacrifices. If you want to please me, let justice roll down like water and righteousness like a mighty stream. And finally, this action establishes injustice. That's why it's a violation of the Constitution. The Constitution calls on us to establish justice. This act establishes injustice. Governors, yours here, attorney generals, every politician, Democrat or Republican, along with every clergy person. And let me just say, so that somebody doesn't say we're only talking about Republican. Democrats, when you had power to fix immigration reform, you didn't do it. When you control both the House and the Senate, you chose to write off our brown brothers and sisters for your own political advantage. And it is time that you stop playing games either party. This is not about left versus right. It's not about Democrat versus Republican. It's about what's right versus what's wrong. And every governor and every attorney general and every politician and every president, a preacher or clergy member should stand up publicly against these actions by President Trump and realize that doing things like this to immigrants and other rising people is one of the first steps in the beginning of fascism. And that if you say nothing, I don't care what party you're in, I don't care what religion you're in, if you say nothing, it is in fact to be an accessory to this very cruel and inhumane policy against humanity. Finally, the members of the president's party, I've been hearing that the Congress people are mad because he put it in their laps. You heard what he said he was going to do during the campaign.
That's right. That's right.
When he was clear about it, what he was going to do. And so in large part, you are to blame for what we are witnessing, because you heard him be a racist and you still endorsed it. You heard him engage in hatred and xenophobia, and you chose partisanism over principle. Your silence then has emboldened him now, which means he alone is not to blame.
So my name is Reverend Dr. Liz Theo Harris, and I have the honor of being co-chair of the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival with the Reverend Dr. William Barber. We are here to let our voices be heard, that we stand with the 800,000 documented, as well as the 11 million immigrants across this land whose lives are at stake at the moment. And we refuse, in our standing up for folks in the fight for DACA, to pit those young people against their immigrant families. We are here with the 11 million immigrants. Everybody who is trying to make a living in this country. Losing DACA will mean that 800,000 people will lose income, lose the ability to support their families. 700,000, 91% of documented folks are employed. They are supporting families. They are breadwinners. They are people who need resources to live and not just survive, but to thrive. And so we are here saying that we live in a country, we live in a world of abundance. We are a country of immigrants. We are a country who should welcome everyone. And so these immigrant brothers and sisters are our brothers and sisters. And we will be here decrying the fact that DACA cannot be revoked. And then we will be here when they attack other sections of immigrant brothers and sisters. Because this is the beginning of a larger attack on immigrants in this country. And we refuse to be disunited. We need to be united. The pain and suffering that is being caused, the fear that is being instilled because of this revoking of DACA is only the beginning. There are another 300,000 folks who have temporary protected status. Refugees and immigrants from Haiti, from Syria, from Honduras, from the Sudan, folks that are fleeing hurricanes, folks that are fleeing famine, who are also under attack. And so we are here to say we will not be divided. That an injury to one here, Detroit, is an injury to all. And we're here to do more than just defend DACA. We're here to more than to beg for crumbs in a system that has way more than enough. Because DACA was inadequate. It was a lifeline for 800,000 people and their families, but it was not enough. We need real immigration reform. We need everyone in this country, however they got here, to have health care. We need everyone in this country, no matter how they got here, to have housing. We need everyone in this country, no matter how they got here, to have education. These are fundamental human rights. And we can have it. We have more than enough to go around. So why is it that Trump and these politicians have national health care, have protected immigrant status for themselves, but then they deny and demean people all across this land? And as Reverend Barber said, this is a moral fight. They are misusing, they are abusing our Constitution when they say that this is illegal. 100 lawyers came out with an open letter saying there is nothing unconstitutional about DACA. There is nothing. So let us not believe those lies. They are lies. We should say that they are lies, and we should understand what they are. So we are here to say that they cannot hide behind faulty constitutional arguments when the law of the land is to promote the general welfare. It's to bring about justice and freedom and equality for all. I'm a Christian pastor. I follow Jesus Christ, who came and said, I have come so that you may have life and have it abundantly. We are living in unprecedented abundance, and yet millions of our immigrant brothers and sisters, millions of other folks living in this country are living in abandonment and fear. And it is enough. It is time for us to stand up. It is time for us to unite, and we will build a powerful movement of immigrants, of people of all races, of all statuses, of all genders, of all sexualities, and we will make this country what it could be, but has not yet been.
Yeah. Just before we take questions from the media, because some will leave, we want you to know our reason for being here tonight is with training in 2 states, Michigan and Ohio, for the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival to address the issues of systemic racism, systemic poverty, ecological devastation, the war economy, and our moral narrative. We're planning for 40 days of action in 2018 in 25 state houses plus the District of Columbia, which will include targeted and agenda-based nonviolent civil disobedience, where people who are impacted, not for the poor, but with the poor, and clergy and activists. And we're talking about doing something that's not been done in history. We know 50 years ago, Dr. King and others, Jewish brothers and sisters, Cesar Chavez and others, planned to do this. He was killed. But in our time, we must not only try to do what was done, but expand it, because this is the time when we need a movement with not just a rally, not just a tweet, not just an email. And we have to change the moral narrative. We've got to break through. I'm going to be talking about that later. But because tonight when we got here, and today when we got here, this happened, we felt we had to have this press conference at the beginning, because it's all connected. The same people that attack the immigrant brothers and sisters attack voting rights. The same people that attack voting rights vote against living wages. And the same people that vote against living wages tend to attack the LGBT community, the Q community. And the same people that tend to attack the LGBT community also attack the Muslim community. And the same people that tend to attack the Muslim community also vote against health care. And the same people that tend to vote against health care also vote to defund and undermine public education. And the same people that vote to defund and undermine public education also put emergency managers in city without the people having an opportunity to vote. And the same people that do that try to roll back environmental laws. Do you know that the majority in Texas politicians called for rolling back laws and rules that would govern corporations before the hurricane, and now all these chemicals are in the water and in the air because in many ways they roll back. So it's all connected. And what we say in this movement, if folk are sinister enough to do meanness together, we ought to be courageous enough to do some good together. Would you hear? But in our movement, we also put a face. We believe we got to put a face on these issues. So would you hear now the face of DACA, the face of our immigrant brothers and sisters? They're having a rally down the street, but Adonis left so he could come and speak to us and speak to the nation and speak to the media. Let's welcome him today as he comes to tell his story.
Thank you, everybody. Good afternoon. Today, I start a hunger strike with dozens of other DACA recipients across the country. There's 5 of us here in the Detroit area, and we're hungry, not just for food, but we're hungry for justice. My name is Adonis, and I am a Latino, undocumented, gay man. And I am a DACA recipient. And I did not feel the need to be involved in a movement for the rights of my people until I personally got affected. I remember it was the same day President Obama took office, January 20, 2009, when my uncle was deported. And that same day, I did not know what to do. And I called Elena Herrada, who's here in the audience, to ask her for her help. And it was the first time that I knew that I could go somewhere to figure out what to do in these times of anguish. But it was too late because my uncle got deported the next day. And that's when I finally realized that I could not stay idle and let the current people in power run over our communities. And I did not know what to do. I was lost in the beginning, like many of us watching at home. We don't know where to start. So one day, a community organizer approached me at Wayne State University when I was studying and told me, "Do you want to come to this training to fight for the DREAM Act?" And I'm like, "Yes, I heard about this DREAM Act back in 2006. It's 2010, why don't we have a DREAM Act yet?" And we're fighting again for the DREAM Act this year, which is just outrageous. But the training that I went to, it was an organizing training. And it's when I finally realized that people have power. Not just corporations with lots of money, but we also have power. And right now, it's up to us to exercise that power. They came immediately after the election for our Muslim brothers and sisters. And we stood up and went to march in the airports to block the Muslim ban. They came after our Sikh family members when they tried to repeal the Affordable Care Act. and we marched, and we went to rallies and town halls, and we hold them accountable. We held their feet to the fire and stopped them. And now they're coming after us, the DACA recipients. And many of us have been very comfortable with our work permit, forgetting about the rest of our families. So I'm also calling on them. This is the time for you to stand up and fight for yourself. Just like hundreds and thousands of immigrants came out and as undocumented and unafraid back in the 2010 to fight for the DREAM Act. We need you now. And we need all of you. We need all of you. We need to stand together, not just for immigrants, but for all of us. For low-income communities, whether they're white, whether they're black, whether they're Latino, whether they're Asian. It doesn't matter what part of the country they're from. It doesn't matter their faith, whether they're Muslim, whether they're Jewish, whether they're Christian, whether they are Hindu, whether they are atheists. It does not matter, because they are attacking all of our rights. And so this is a call to stand together, and that is why I am going on a hunger strike with these students, because I am hungry for justice. And I am calling on all of you. This is a time to call our congressmen, whether they're Republican or Democrat. We want a clean DREAM Act and a clean HOPE Act with no poison pills. That's the least you guys can do for us. We're not willing to throw our families under the bus by putting more money on deportations. We want a clean DREAM Act and a clean HOPE Act with zero funding for deportations, with zero funding for private prison corporations, with zero funding for private detention centers, with zero funding for the wall. Zero. And so I'm calling on all of you. I'm calling on all of you to support the strikers, not just by calling your congressmen and telling them that this is the least they can do, but also put your wallet and your money where our mouths are. We are calling on a divestment campaign from the backers of hate. Those corporations that are funding private prisons and private detention centers. One of them, JP Morgan Chase Bank. If you have a bank account with them, this is the time to switch. Jamie Dimon, we're calling on you to put pressure on your Congress representatives, your senators, on President Trump to pass this clean DREAM Act and clean HOPE Act with no poison pills, because we're not going to accept $1 more for deportations. I want to end with a poem that's keeping me focused on the mission right now. And it's a poem by Ashada Shakur. And I want to ask everybody to say it with me. We have a duty to fight for our freedom.
We have a duty to fight for our freedom.
We have a duty to win.
We have a duty to win.
We must love and protect one another.
We must love and protect one another.
We have nothing to lose but our chains.
We have nothing to lose but our chains.
One more time with more energy. It is our duty to fight for our freedom. It is our duty to win. We must love and protect one another. We have nothing to lose but our chains. Thank you, everybody.
Amen. Stay here. You got to go. See, say, we have to connect together. They're going to try to split the African American community from the Latino community. My brothers who are African American, remember that Mexico was anti-slavery before America. They do these things, and all this revisionist history. We call people illegal immigrants. But I think the land of Mexico, Texas, and California belonged at one time to Mexico. So how do you take people's land and then bring them back to work that land and then call them illegal? And then once you get all the work out of them, then you want to throw them out. Isn't it amazing we talk about throwing them out, but we've never thrown the people out that hire? Isn't it amazing that we don't talk about all of the money that is earned in Social Security that they can never collect, billions of dollars, that actually helps to support the rest? There's so many lies. But the greatest lie is this attempt to, the supremacy lie, to split people based on skin color. And I'm glad that Liz mentioned others, Haiti and others. But listen, at the end of the day, let's be clear. The two reasons, real main reasons they do not want to have fair immigration. Number one, if you have fair and just immigration, then those people can join labor unions and force the raising of wages for everybody. As long as you can have a group of people that you can push low wages on, you can hold wages low. Secondly, if you have fair and just immigration, then folk can vote. And the bottom line is, so much of this is not about 2017. It's about 2020 and 2030 and the changing demographics in America, and those who know that they will not be able to win elections in a fully diverse electorate, that extremism will have no chance. And so they're trying to lock down and lock up the democracy now. We know the game. We refuse to play it. We're going to fight. We call on every lawyer that can to join other lawyers that are going to be suing. We call on churches and synagogues to get your church sanctuaries ready to create a whole new group of underground railroads and sanctuary churches. And say, if you want to come get them, you got to come get us too. They can't get us all. They can't take us all. But it's time that we hook up. Come on. Arm in arm. Arm in arm. Arm in arm. Are there any members, everybody in the audience, stand up, arm in arm. Let the media see it. They will not. They will not. Say, will not divide us. Cross the aisles. Will not divide us. Hook up like a chain. Hook up like a chain. Hook up. There's an army rising. Hook up like a chain. Hook up. Say, come on, hook up, hook up. Move in the middle of the aisle. Hook up. Hook up. Media, do you have any questions while we're hooked up? Any members of the media? Say, this is what democracy looks like.
This is what democracy looks like.
We hook up. We ain't going nowhere. Former slaves, we ain't going nowhere. White brothers and sisters who have stood in the tradition of the abolitionists, we ain't going nowhere. First Nation, we ain't going nowhere. Latinos and Haitians and other immigrants, we aren't going anywhere. I got proper on you since I was in college. This is our land. Nobody's going to tear us away from it. Media, do you have any questions? All right. A picture speaks 1,000 words. Put your hands together. I feel like putting some joy in the room. Come on, put your hands together. Put your hands together. Somebody say, forward together. Not one step back. Forward together. Not one step back. Forward together. Forward together. Forward together. Forward together. Forward together. Not one step back. When I say justice, you say justice. 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 When I say justice, you say justice. 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 All right, all right.